Welcome to the chaos sector. Let's address the PCA for a moment because many claim it's simple to obtain. And to be honest, it was. One of our audience members gave us the direct link to it and we downloaded it. As you see, the name is displayed of Eric Grower as the private driver. Now, Idaho's PCA was publicly released redacting that name. Moscow PD requested for the arrest warrant. Kohberger had traveled to Pennsylvania, of course, and Pennsylvania enforced that arrest warrant by court order. The arrest warrant consists of the exhibits of Moscow PD officers, including the search warrant from Washington State as well. They had everything they needed, and Kohberger was arrested December 30th in Pennsylvania, of course. Now, although this is accessible and it gives JLR a bit of breathing room, he's not out of the woods just yet, because we just focus on the other half of that issue in the last episode. Eric Grower. Now, who is this? Eric Gower, who is this? One of them has been interviewed, right? Was it Eric Gower and the name was spelled incorrectly? I simply don't see Idaho State Police making that mistake, especially with such a distinct last name. So was it Eric Grower then? Well, this means once again that JLR's claim of it being Eric Gower from Moscow is incorrect. Okay, maybe it was a mistake, right? Not so fast. If you examine throughout that video, he is specifically calling him Eric Grower, but has a photo of a man named Eric Gower, which he obviously researched about. All right, we're just going back over this briefly. An accusation has been made against JLR, and although he may have not obtained a sealed PCA, his character is still aligning with the suspicion regarding the private driver. Once again, we go back to the interview. Although some keep claiming the private driver was in fact Eric Gower, then who is being interviewed claiming to be from Pullman, Washington? And why didn't the private driver mention anything about being a friend of the family? Yet the family did, because they stated that after his interview, that person would mention that in their interview. After all, they talked about basically everything else regarding the housemates. Because it wasn't even in their thought process to even think about making such a statement. But the family said it to, well, kind of gloss over the private driver as quickly as possible. I know someone would leave a comment saying, no, that's true, the family did know the private driver. Then why would they kidnap those girls then? They didn't really know them now, did they? See, this is why we keep coming back to the element of an impersonation, which we, of course, know JLR has a history of doing. Now, law enforcement identified the DoorDash driver, but didn't reveal their name in the PCA. But you identify the private driver? We can't go with the assumption that the driver wanted to keep their identity concealed, because I'm pretty sure the private driver would also want to keep theirs concealed as well. You follow so far? So what does this mean? Well, we can only conclude that the identity of the DoorDash driver is someone Moscow PD felt needed to keep a secret in the so-called unredacted PCA. Doesn't seem too unredacted to me, right? Again, they identified the DoorDash driver, yet they didn't reveal that identity of that driver in the unredacted PCA, which revealed the private driver. There's fuckery going on here. And before someone posts something saying, the identity of the DoorDash driver was revealed, it was this person or that person. It's not in the unredacted PCA, so I'm sorry we can't give merit to your claim. We were wrong about JLR obtaining a sealed PCA, as we didn't know that PCA was out there. Well, technically it wasn't. It was the arrest warrant that was made public, and the PCA just so happened to be included. It's like a pride lion, The pride lion gets angry with one of the cubs, and although other cubs had nothing to do with it, the male just attacks whoever is near him. Because once the pride lion gets angry, they lose a bit of focus and even compassion. In other words, we're working on keeping our composure and focus without being so angry. Okay, now there is also the next problem. Does Eric Grower or Gower have a red Mustang? Because it's evident that the vehicle that kidnapped the girls was a Mustang. There's another problem. Now, everyone claimed it was a red Mustang, and we just broke it down as well. But Olivia stated she saw them arrive back home in an Uber, private driver, rideshare, maybe it's a bit minor to some, but there was no mention of a friend of the family, and we definitely haven't seen this vehicle in any footage, especially from the mysterious leak of the neighbor's security camera footage, which displays the reported time that the girls arrived back home. We can't see what she saw, which she states was around 1:56 a.m. A screenshot is leaked from the neighbor's home at 1:56 a.m. Some claim the time was edited into the footage, but it doesn't really matter. The fact that it was leaked proves that someone from that home is snooping around, just like the landlord of the Linda Lane apartments. They don't give the name of the DoorDash driver. Now, if they identified the private driver but concealed the identity of the DoorDash driver, well, is this by request of the DoorDash driver? And if so, why would the private driver, this is just...
Exactly. There's no logical reason for doing that, unless their identity is very important. And of course, nobody in the mainstream media, you know what, let me address that for a moment since we're discussing the DoorDash driver. Megyn Kelly had her little series of damage control covering the Idaho case, but as everyone knows, she had recently focused on the element of drug overdoses, and none other than Bonnie and Clyde. Now, what prompted her to focus on those two in connection to the Idaho murders? As always, truth. Kelly basically alluded to the murders being drug-related because that had become the consensus by many, presenting herself as some, quote, independent reporter on her own inquiring about the murder case. Now, I will say she is a former attorney, so her perspective does have merit in how she discusses the legalities of the case. But we all know she's just blabbering at the mouth to prevent the mainstream media as a whole of coming to the reality it was in fact drug-related. But the DoorDash driver's identity should have been revealed in the unredacted PCA, just like the private driver's identity was. There is no other explanation other than it's Bonnie, and they most definitely wouldn't reveal the name Emma Bailey in that PCA. Everyone gradually came to that conclusion anyway, but it would have been immediately with her name revealed. I notice Moscow PD didn't come out and refute the claims of those crack employees who gave the description of a female that matched Bonnie's, right? No debunking of theories that Bonnie had delivered. Wait, not only delivered, but also ordered the food to the house that night. Oh, you've debunked everything else. Why not debunk that? The fact that Bonnie is connected, this means Clyde was also connected. And if they're both connected, this means it's drug-related. And if it's drug-related, Moscow PD is not touching that detective work with a 200-foot pole. So the name of the DoorDash driver was concealed to prevent the trail to that drug-related motive from becoming the center focus. And that leads to, well, a lot of questions directed at Moscow PD, the FBI, Lada County, the universities, the surviving housemates, and also the victims, the Greek life, and unfortunately the family and friends also. So, it's entirely too many dominoes that would fall. Hence, no identity of the DoorDash driver revealed in the unredacted PCA.
It's just exhausting. Why identify the private driver but not the DoorDash driver? They're both involved with or linked to the victims, right? The DoorDash driver delivered food to Xana and was there around the time the alleged Kohberger was there. Never got a statement from the DoorDash driver, observing a white vehicle driving around also. So what to make of this oddity? Identify one, but conceal the identity of the other when both were there that night. And one of them was literally there around the time frame the murders were reported to have happened. Think about that a bit. The alleged Kohberger had arrived back around 4:05 a.m. So at some point, that DoorDasher would spot a white vehicle driving around, and since it was the alleged killer, they would recall seeing that vehicle near the home. Just like the private driver in their bogus interview, right? Quote, I arrived to the area about 4 a.m., and I was making sure I had the correct address for the delivery. I found the address and pulled up into the parking lot. I didn't see anybody, but there were lights on in the house. I had called and told them I was on my way. So when I approached the home, a young lady answered the door and said she was Xana, so I handed her the food. And I left after the delivery, unquote. When asked if they saw anything suspicious or any vehicles, the DoorDasher stated, quote, I did see a few vehicles around, but didn't think much of it. Like nothing seemed suspicious. But I did see a white car driving around. It was like driving kind of slow. But, I never thought anything was going on, It's so sad to know I was at the home minutes before those kids were murdered, unquote. Nope, apparently the DoorDasher had nothing to say. They were at the home minutes before the murders. Surely Moscow PD wanted to probe them a bit, get a statement, and even be interviewed by fucking Law and Crime. But I guess they had nothing to share about that night. Of course not. Okay, let's just relax. All right, let's try to do this without getting frustrated. Ugh, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's impossible. I can't. It's JLR posing as a private driver in the interviews. I don't care, it's adding up. With Bonnie as the DoorDash driver, and Moscow PD intentionally concealed that identity to protect her. And JLR gave an alternate name for Eric Gower and then presented him as the private driver to protect the kidnappers and also Bonnie. We're just going to keep coming back to this theory. It's just going to keep rearing its ugly head. Again, the DoorDash driver was not identified because it was Bonnie. Remember, the employees at the crack described her, and Bonnie stated she was not dashing at the time and the FBI had been up there prior. Seems those employees at the crack could be key witnesses. Not if the FBI can help it. One private driver, 2 different residences, that's what you end up with if you claim it was Eric Gower from Moscow and the interview of the private driver. Okay? Some have made claims about both dummy cars and who they were owned by. Some claim that the red Mustang belonged to, well, basically a coward who abused his wife and kids. Well, that puts that ride home with him into perspective. I think we'll leave that here until further investigating into this person. Some claim that the white Hyundai Elantra was sold to a female by the previous owner of the victim's house. To be honest, we can't do anything with this information unless we literally dig into it, which is a bit time-consuming. Now, we all can see the 3-slat design in the taillights, right? Many have saw this before. This would be a Mustang, which was found crashed and abandoned in town, and a forensics team was out there. Why in the world would a forensics team be investigating what would appear to be just an abandoned vehicle? Well, if the authorities were notified the vehicle had a strong smell of bleach, then there's DNA involved. What did they find, huh? Surely the forensics team collected some type of DNA. Anywho. We find a white Hyundai Elantra crashed and abandoned in Oregon. Moscow PD and Oregon PD dismissed the claims it was involved in the murders, which mean those theories had reached their desk. Think about it. Someone informed them those theories had been floating around, and they came out publicly to dismiss it. Yet, you can't rule out the vehicle because you don't know if the owner of the vehicle was involved or not. But somehow you looked into Kohberger's vehicle. Out of all the white Hyundai Elantras submitted, hey, they had thousands of registries. When did they look into Kohberger? Because during the time frame those registries were being submitted, the DNA hadn't identified anyone. And of course, 3.5 octillion, octrillion, or octatrillion, or whatever bogus number they threw out, was traced back to a Kohberger's family tree, which they matched with one of the Elantras submitted. Not saying it's impossible, but that seemed a bit quick, if you ask me. Kohberger claimed that wasn't his DNA in the home. He said it made it known, and the defense is sitting on the frame, just watching the prosecution self-destruct. And on top of that, you had no proof that the footage you had obtained was a white Hyundai Elantra. Mind you, the vehicle was described as a, quote, light-colored vehicle in that Linda Lane surveillance. So you had no vehicle identified, so where did the Hyundai Elantra come from? The screenshot from the gas station. And then, this make and model was deemed the suspect in the Linda Lane surveillance. Are you guys seeing this crap? And then claim that the very vehicle you identified by make and model in that screenshot is not the same model you're looking for? Once again, even in the beginning, that gas station footage was never released. Not a snippet. Nothing. The clerk claimed she didn't know which direction the vehicle headed. The vehicle headed right onto the highway and speeded out of town. She could see this from the front camera facing the intersection. If it were Kohberger, more than likely, he would head straight through the intersection, back into the neighborhood, after, for some reason, driving all the way near that area. So whose vehicle is that? Moscow PD. They've never publicly identified the owner of that vehicle, yet it was the vehicle they wanted everyone to believe was the suspect. Remember, that came after they had obtained Linda Lane surveillance. And some may suggest they didn't have to publicly identify the owner of the vehicle. It was ruled not the vehicle. First of all, how would they know that? Let me guess, they ruled that Elantra out due to the light-colored vehicle in the Linda Lane footage. That's priceless. Second of all, it is the exact make and model of the alleged suspect at the time and traveling in town around the time the murders had occurred. So just like the white Hyundai Elantra was ruled out and identified as a female with the vehicle registered in Colorado, do you see? Mind you, initially they reported that the murders occurred between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., and that white Hyundai Elantra is seen speeding down White Avenue around 3:45 a.m., right smack dab in the time frame the murders would have been committed. But due to Xana's so-called cell phone activity and her so-called DoorDash delivery, they pushed it back, and Payne approximated the murders occurred between 4 a.m. to 4:25 a.m. So, of course, the white Hyundai Elantra speeding down White Avenue can't be the suspect. Oh, really? How can you know that for sure? And furthermore, if the gas clerk claimed she couldn't tell which direction the vehicle headed, is this essentially what Moscow PD also claimed? Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it. She basically spoke for both of them. Yeah, okay. Yet, they claim they spotted Koberger's vehicle driving on the highway, heading back to Pullman. Where did the other white Hyundai Elantra go? A mysterious vehicle just thrown out there and matches the description of the alleged killer, and it's ruled out due to the updated time of death? Who was driving that fucking vehicle? In conclusion here, the PCA was attached to the arrest warrant. The actual unredacted PCA itself has never been publicly released, so it's a technicality in a way. Eric Grower would have to be an owner of a red Mustang that kidnapped those girls. We see the make and model in the window's reflection. The DoorDash driver somehow wasn't identified in that unredacted PCA because it was Bonnie Bailey. The white Hyundai Elantra crashed and abandoned in Oregon was the getaway vehicle, in my opinion. That's why they never identified the owner of the vehicle they publicly claimed was the suspect in the gas station screenshot. And JLR impersonated a private driver in the interview. Oh, and Goncalves. Yeah, I'm sorry if we've offended the victims by mispronouncing their names. Please forgive us. How dare we mispronounce the name of one of the victims we have spent over a year trying to get justice for? Then why would you mispronounce the name then? Just to bait more of those snakes out of the grass. And go check all of the previous episodes pronouncing the name. We've always pronounced the name Goncalves, despite others pronouncing it Goncalves. But you know that, so why even address it? Furthermore, to claim that we are disrespecting the victims. Actually, you're the one disrespecting the victims by even posting that comment. It's not true for one, and you know that, and yet you still decided to post it. That tells me you have nothing substantial to bring to the table. This is why we call out individuals in the comment section. We don't tolerate nonsense. And another comment they posted, "Why are you telling us about the grub truck footage? We already know that. You don't know anything, to be honest." Yep. The same thing happened in the Kenneka Jenkins case. Chaos was mowing everything down, and people from her hometown were all in the comment sections of many content creators posing as normal posters. Of course, there are people from Moscow running around on YouTube. Obviously, they won't say they're from Moscow. Rather create these accounts, just lurking around spying on what's being said about the murders. Joining in 2022, the same year the murders took place? And somehow you think you're a part of some truth movement or true crime community? What were you doing before those murders took place? Don't have us check your channel. It would tell us all we need to know. Oh my fucking, you joined in 2023? And your channel is, quote, dedicated to investigating the Idaho murders? Now what that indicates to me is that you, yes you, are from Moscow. But you're not really investigating. You're trying to see what others are presenting. Many presented the theory that Kenneka's family was involved in her death, and we really tacked that on the wall, and people were told about it from Chicago, and many started to lurk around watching content from the J4K. Oh yeah, we broke that down, and if anyone is still around, they remember the finale, with a series called The Wretched Hole. Kenneka sent a text message to her sister before she was taken out of that room. When the sister was asked by a reporter, did she communicate with her, she said no. And the look on her face showed guilt. And she wouldn't say she communicated with Kenneka that night, because it would indicate she was aware that her sister was in danger. That's what the text message was about, because it was during the time frame Kenneka was ready to leave the party. She started to notice there were more dangerous individuals coming to the party, and she decided to leave. Text her sister about it, and well, she simply ignored it. Even the mother was interacting with YouTubers, arguing on Facebook about certain claims, theories, and even holding her responsible for her odd behavior. That specific text message was never released, yet all of the other phone records from that night were released. And of course, Kaylee and Maddie's phone records have never been released because it would show they were in danger, just like Kenneka's text message would show. You see this photo of the crime scene? This is the kosher kitchen in which she was discovered deceased in that freezer. Now that window has a bit of smearing on it, right? But in this photo, you can even see the yellow wall on the other side. To conceal this evidence, they literally placed a privacy mask on the window in surveillance to prevent you from seeing the opposite side, which would reveal multiple people on the other side. I mean, it was so blatant. We reveal the editing zoomed in, which would make it even more ridiculous. As she walked around that corner, you can see fragments of individuals' shadows. Yeah, they did a horrible job in editing. We revealed one of her so-called friends was holding her by the waist, escorting her to that freezer. The peers were exposed, the sister knew Kanika was in danger that night, and the mother surely would have been notified as well. Our content became more and more direct towards the family because they knew it was going to happen. And when our content became that direct, the wave of DC agents, that being of course damage control agents, started to sprout out even more. Even in the beginning, all the blame was on the hotel, claiming the security guard was the one who escorted her to the freezer, or one of the maintenance workers did it, and the hotel had an underground organ harvesting ring and killed Kanika for her organs. But if the hotel was involved in the murder, well, you do realize that the peers would have conspired with the hotel for those organs, right? And since this is big business, definitely the family was a part of it as well, right? Those were our rebuttals to those theories. In the Idaho murders investigation, these DC agents don't want the murders to be rooted in drug activity because it places the focus on the town, the authorities, the universities, the college circle, and even the housemates themselves. And even those DC agents because they're more than likely from Moscow. No, we can't have that. It was the 29-year-old creeper who couldn't keep a date and was stalking younger females because he was a loser. Yeah, that's the killer. He's guilty. Yeah, nice try, but logic and common sense will always prevail over damage control, my friends. And the Idaho murders case has family members also interacting with individuals on social media. So we already know there are those who relay information to the family, Moscow PD, the prosecution, heck, even the FBI. We've given these specific people nicknames. YouTube informants. You can't blend in, my friend. Your intentions can't be masked with being a, subscriber or joining stream chats discussing the case. You will be triggered by something that will bring out your true intentions. Check the chaos. Yeah, it says 2015. That's almost 10 years in itself. But we've been around since 2008, doing the same work as we're doing now. So you might want to show a bit more respect to those who put in the hard work. If not, then just move along. And don't tell me you're subscribed to the chaos. Clearly that's to spy on the channel. I'm not saying everyone who recently got a channel is somehow dishonest. But it's always the ones who've just joined the YouTube platform who have the nerve to be running around criticizing everyone. Content creators have been around for years, even decades on YouTube, working hard, investigating crimes, exposing deception, all types of subjects being addressed and discussed. And here comes some person in 2022, 23, or even 24, running around criticizing others. How dare you? Not sure if you know this, but you're not able to snoop around over here. This is the chaos sector. Can you believe these people?
Yeah, I know.
What's fucking
it's how
wrong
things
with
are on
them?
YouTube.
After all we've done, they sit around cherry picking. It makes them look pathetic. Why put yourself, you know what? It's okay. Can't stop the truth from
Don't
coming out.
worry about it. Just let it go.
I mean, how
you know.
about you contribute to the cause? You know, instead of lurking around on other content creators' channels leaving childish comments. Won't lift a fucking finger, but have the nerve to try to correct others.
I know.
And they wonder
It's
why
okay.
we seem very
Let's just get ready
condescending
for the next
sometimes.
episode.
We just dish the shit back out that we